Welcome everyone. I believe we can start. What happened? Basically, 5 state members have submitted a proposal to the European Chemical Agency to restrict the manufacture, placing on the market, and use of PFAS substances. PFAS substances have been defined with a structural definition, and this involved also fluoropolymer in this proposal for a ban. Fluoropolymer, we mean all the fluoropolymer, but focusing on PTFE, PVDF, PFA, and FKM. This means this for fluoropolymer, as all the other. If the proposal will be approved by the EU Commission, this fluoropolymer won't be seen anymore on the European territory. We cannot manufacture them, we cannot place in the market, we cannot use. Where we are, basically, on the in January, the proposal has been submitted, and on the 22nd of March, a public consultation has opened. What does it mean? 5 state members proposed a restriction. Now, the European Chemical Agency has to evaluate and has to develop an opinion about the proposal. The European Chemical Agency will have 2 different committees, one that is focused on the risk assessment, the other one on the socioeconomic analysis. These 2 groups will have to consider the information in the proposal, but also all the information that will be submitted by us, by organization, by everyone in the public consultation. Here is why our reply consultation is really important. The properties that have been identified by the regulators that pose a risk for PFAS is high persistency, the first one, and then we have many other properties like long-range transportation, mobility, accumulation in plants, potential bioaccumulation that are not shared from other fluoropolymers. Here is a very important point for us. Fluoropolymer has only one risk identified, that is the high persistency. And without that, the high persistency itself poses an acceptable risk to justify a restriction. This is a very important concept because there are some technicalities on the REACH regulation that the persistency itself cannot pose a risk to justify restriction. Actually, we have seen the risk parameters that were considered in the proposal submitters, but at the same time, OECD defined fluoropolymers as polymer of low concern. Actually, fluoropolymer meets all the 14 criteria of polymer of low concern. That means that fluoropolymer are non-toxic, non-bioaccumulative, non-mobile, not water, they are water insoluble. So you understand that there is some misunderstanding that we have been fall into a regulation of substances that are toxic, that are bioaccumulative, but fluoropolymers are not. The position, our position in respect to the dossier is that it's too broad, it's not science-based, and it's lacking of many. In the proposal, there is a concept that alternative of fluoropolymer exist and can be easily developed. This is something that, again, we can prove that it's not true, because fluoropolymers alternative, maybe they exist, but they won't have the same performance, and we have to, during the public consultation, we have to prove it. Also, that can be easily developed. As you know, many of our applications, they will require years of approvals, and that's really challenging. There are certification, regulation, specification that are very difficult to overpass. So we have to prove during the public consultation, we have to provide during the public consultation all this information. Also, in the proposal, there is indifference about the safety of fluoropolymer. The fluoropolymer are mentioned very few times in the proposal itself. They just consider full PFAS substances and the risk that these substances has. Also, another very important thing is that in the proposal dossier, in the restriction dossier, the proportionality between cost, risk, and benefit for fluoropolymer is missing. Of course, something that it's really, really important, we are not defending PFAS substances. We are only defending fluoropolymers. We believe that those PFAS that has concern like mobility, bioaccumulative, and toxic properties must be regulated. But at the same time, we believe that fluoropolymer, they don't share the same concerning risk, and so they should be excluded from this proposal. Fluoropolymer are in the proposal, as mentioned before, only because of a structural definition, not because they are toxic, not because they have environmental risk or health human risk itself. So we share initiative to regulate PFAS that have warning profile and represent unacceptable risk for the environment and for human, but we strongly believe that fluoropolymers, they must be excluded because they don't share these profiles. What is doing the industry? The industry believe that the safety of fluoropolymer during their life cycle. The industry it's presenting data that fluoropolymer are not posing any danger, any risk, and they don't pose unacceptable risk. It will be questioned the criteria of only persistence for a restriction of fluoropolymer. It will be challenged the proposal because of lack of risk and proportionality. But most important now, we are involving all the fluoropolymer value chain to have a stronger unified voice to defense. This it's really a hot topic for me. We are doing this. We are going to apply to the public consultation. We are doing our work. You have to do it as well. You have to apply and reply to the public consultation, but I strongly suggest you to involve also your downstream users. Because if we consider only the top industry, our industry is small, fluoropolymer is small industry. We have to ask to our customer and to their customer, to our OEMs, to reply to the public consultation, explain why those single small seals is essential for the functionality of the machine. Because our industry is small, European regulators, they don't care about our economy, but we have to let them understand that the downstream uses of fluoropolymer is creating huge value for the industry, for the society. To do so, the only way that we have is replying to the public consultation, pushing our customer, pushing OEMs to reply to the public consultation. If we won't do this, regulators won't have this information and they will ban fluoropolymers from the EU. As mentioned, regulators have some concern also about fluoropolymers. The persistency is the top one, and they are evaluating the old life cycles of fluoropolymer. In the production phase, they had concern because of fluorinated polymerization hide used in the production of fluoropolymer. This is not true because it has been used, but the industry has developed alternative to these substances for the polymerization of fluoropolymers like PTFE, FKM, PVDF, PFA. More, for example, for us, fluor seals, we are processing mainly only granular PTFE. Granular PTFE never used any fluoropolymer, fluorinated polymerization hides because of its structure. So this, it's not a problem. For main fluoropolymer have been developed a solution that is not using concerning substances, hazardous substances. For some grades of PTFE, this has never been true. So the risk in the production phase has been overtaken. In the use phase, there is no identified risk. Fluoropolymers, as mentioned before, meet the OECD criteria to be defined a polymer of low concern. In the end of life, so after solving the problem in the production phase, showing to regulators that have been developed solution not to use concerning substances like polymerization hides based on fluorine, they start focusing on the end of life. they start focusing on the end of life. This means fluoropolymer may degrade in small PFAS molecules. This is not true. Danish EPA has proved that that's not possible. Another concern in the end of life is in an incomplete incineration that can create PFAS, so emission of PFAS from fluoropolymer during the incineration processes. Industry leaders are working on studies about the complete decomposition of fluoropolymer and their behavior during incineration processes. So they will be presented, actually have been already presented some, and more will have to come, prove that also the incineration phase does not pose a risk of PFAS emission. Last, the landfill leakage as a concern from regulators of fluoropolymer, but fluoropolymer are inerts, are non-toxic, and they cannot leak it. So this, again, it's not a risk for the end of life phase. Let's do a short recap. So PFAS, a large group of 4,000, actually 10,000 substances that have some concern. Fluoropolymer are a distinct subset of PFAS that are safe, non-mobile, and non-bioaccumulative. They are polymer of low concern for ACD. So we believe that they will have to receive a complete exemption from this regulation proposal. Fluoropolymer offer a unique combination of functionalities to ensure safety, reliability, durability, and in critical performance and application. This is something that it's a sentence. Now in the public consultation, you and your customer, the downstream user, has to prove it with data, with information about the application, where the fluoropolymer are used, why they are used, and why they are critical. Because it's not anymore the time of sentences. Fluoropolymer are unique, they cannot be replaced. Regulators need to receive information and detail about these sentences. Only doing so, we can receive an exemption and we can keep to give value to the industry thanks to fluoropolymers. Fluoropolymer are used in wide range of extremely critical application. This is true, but again, we have to reply to the public consultation and give to the regulators this information. If we are not giving this information to them, they don't know it. And if we won't get an exemption, but we will have derogation, all those information that haven't been submitted, they will receive a ban after 3 years from now, actually. Probably, who knows, we will see, but we have to give this information. We have to spend time. I know that it's challenging. I know that it's difficult, but if we don't give information, they won't receive it and it won't be considered in the dossier. Some of the critical application, as you might know, they are really, really important for our industry. It's used in renewable energies, electric vehicles, in semiconductor components, for semiconductor production equipment, process in the chemical industry. For example, in the dossier, in the proposal, the chemical industry wasn't even considered as an industry where fluoropolymer or PFAS are used. You understand that if no one's during the public consultation will say, oh yes, PTFE, fluoropolymer are used in chemical industry, regulators, they don't know, and they will just give their derogation for oil and gas, but they won't give derogation for chemical industry. So that means that fluoropolymer cannot be used anymore in chemical industry or in specific application. This is really important. We have to talk with our customer, with our downstream users to give more information to the public consultation. Last but not the least, which is the importance. I already underlined before. Our industry is small, but the downstream value of fluoropolymer is huge. There are small seals that are critical for multi-millions machine in production of whatever. But if we don't explain why that single seals has a value for that huge machine that is producing a huge value for the industry, European industry, regulators won't know it, they will ban. So what we have to do, what's next? We have to engage all the entire value chain, including you, as we are doing right now, but you have to engage your client, your customer, to provide information. Of course, we are only on the top of the iceberg. The downstream use, as mentioned many times during this meeting, it's huge. But we have to reply to the public consultation and explain why. If we don't explain, if your customer, the OEMs, won't explain it, they don't know it, and it will be a problem. So the goal is to obtain a complete exemption for fluoropolymer. This is what we strongly believe that we can reach it. If this won't be the case, as it has been developed, the proposal, it's based on restriction and derogation. So if we can get an exemption for fluoropolymer, there will be derogation for individual industry and or application in specific. And again, if a specific application or a specific industry hasn't been mentioned and we didn't provide information about that industry, then application, why that single fluoropolymer is needed, if it's not written in that dossier and we don't get an exemption, that application will be banned. We don't have any possibility of making it happen in a different way. We have to provide this information to the public consultation. So thank you, everyone. Again, I'm sorry for the lack of internet connection at the beginning of this call. Now I will give the word to Jaime Sales, Managing Director of Can Service Iberia, that it's going to explain you exactly how you can reply to the public consultation on ECA website. Thank you, everyone. Again, see you later for a short Q&A session.
So good morning, everybody. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to provide information to the public consultation, which, as Giovanni said, is the only way that industry can make its voice heard during this whole process. So we're going to look a little bit first. I'll start with a short introduction on the Chem Service Group, and then we will guide you through the public consultation on the PFAS restriction process. We will have an overview on the ECA questionnaire, or the specific questions that they are putting forward. And we will provide some tips and advice on how to effectively contribute to this process. So a few words on Chem Service. We are a consulting company for the chemical industry on all matters related to regulatory affairs and product stewardship. We have offices over the world, with main offices located in Germany, where is our headquarters. And then we have offices in Luxembourg, South Korea, the United States, United Kingdom, and as well in Spain. That's where I'm based. And in short, we are one of the leading regulatory affairs service providers for the chemical industry. We have a significant team, over 80 people, with different profiles covering chemistry, chemical engineering, toxicology, and environmental science, and in essence, all the aspects related to regulatory and compliance. We provide support on the main regulations on chemicals for industry globally, not only EU REACH, but also Korea REACH, developments in Turkey, and other areas. And more broadly, we offer services on toxicology, risk assessment, and as well on consortium management. So again, we offer the broad portfolio of all the activities required for compliance. Mainly from the Spanish office, we are focusing on what we call advocacy, which is product defense. So all aspects related to the more complex procedures under REACH, for example, the authorization and restriction processes. We carry out socioeconomic evaluations, and we help companies to develop strategies to better position the business in front of the regulatory challenges, which we are, of course, talking today about a very significant one, which is the PFAS restriction. There are others. You are all aware of the so-called Chemical Strategy for Sustainability, which the European Union introduced a couple of years ago, which places strong pressure on chemicals and the chemical industry, which is in a way a paradox, because at the same time Europe also keeps pushing for industrial autonomy, independence in certain critical technological sectors, decarbonization, and the EU Green Deal. Now, unfortunately, whether they like it or not, for all of those initiatives, chemicals are going to be required. Particularly, fluoropolymers are going to be strongly required, and certainly we will need to find a way to combine adequate protection to human health and the environment with this desire that we all share, that Europe will continue to play a key role in the industrial scene in the near future, but also in the long term. So, without further ado, let's just go into the information on the public consultation on the PFAS restriction. First of all, just a few words on why is this public consultation coming up. It's not something that the European Chemicals Agency does because they thought it was a good idea. Actually, the public consultation is listed in the REACH regulation. It's in the legal text. It's an obligation that ECHA has. They need to open a consultation for all relevant stakeholders to provide their input to the restriction that has been proposed. And it's also in the legal text that this consultation needs to last for 6 months. And it's also relevant to note that it's stated in the legal text that the committees of ECHA, first the Risk Assessment Committee, then the Socioeconomic Analysis Committee as well, they need to take into account the opinion, for their opinion, all the input that is going to be provided in the consultation. That does not necessarily mean that they will have to accept everything, but they will have to provide a justification if they don't use certain information that they will receive, why they take that decision. For those that may be interested, there is further information available on the restriction process by ECHA that can be followed via the link that you see in this slide. For the topic of interest today, the specific public consultation on the PFAS substances, this started on the 22nd of March, and it's going to run until the 25th of September. Interestingly, in other restriction processes, ECHA fixes, typically it's a month deadline for what they call the more influential comments. In this opportunity, they have not done that. It's not very clear why they have changed their procedure this time. There was a webinar by ECHA yesterday where this question was asked, and the answer was not very clear because they said they thought it was not necessary, but at the same time, they encourage industry or other stakeholders to provide comments as early as possible. And this is also a position that we share. If critical information is available, it should be delivered as soon as possible. And this is because the committees are going to be working on their opinion on a continued process. They're not going to wait until the 25th of September and then open the box and see what they have received. They're going to be looking at the comments on a continued basis. We know there's going to be a first internal meeting of the Risk Assessment Committee in early June. So we are advising that if you have relevant information which can be submitted before the end of May, this is advisable. There's always the opportunity to provide further information that complements what one has delivered first, if that information needs to be expanded. You have the link here where you will find the consultation page, and then we will go now through a summary and a description of how this questionnaire looks like. So we see basically 6 sections. We have a header, and then you will be requested personal information, organizational information. You will have a section, which is the more relevant section in terms of what they are asking for. Well, all the comments that you may provide will be non-confidential. You have then a section where you can attach information that will be regarded as non-confidential, and then a final section where you can provide confidential information, and we will discuss on these differences shortly. So the header, this is what you will what you will see when you open the link to the public consultation. Basically, in this header, ECHA is defining the substances and the scope of the restriction proposal. You need to click on the box that states that you have read the guidance and information note. This is standard procedure. And then you should select the option that best describes how you found or how you learned about the public consultation. This is basically for their own internal statistics. Personal information, well, I don't think there's anything to comment here. You need to provide information on who is delivering. It needs to be noted that this section will not be disclosed by ECHA at any moment, so individual names will not be seen. Then you will get a question on your organization. You will be asked on behalf of who you are providing information. You obviously will talk about companies. You should select the option that you are responding on behalf of an organization or institution, and type of organization would be ideally company, or if there's if this is different, whatever defines better your role. You need to include the country and the name of the organization. However, you can choose to keep the name of your organization as confidential. Section 3 is the section on non-confidential comments. We are going to look at this a little bit in more detail later. But basically, this is the core of the key questions that are being asked by ECHA. First step is to select from a list of specific items for which you are in a position to provide comments and information. You will need to tick the mandatory box in this section that you understand that you are responsible for not including confidential information in this section. Now, we need to be very clear here. Anything that is displayed in sections where information is regarded as non-confidential, it will be shared and it will be open to everybody to see. So you need to be careful with what you provide in this section. You have the possibility to advance a short summary on what is going to be your contribution. There's a text, an open text field for this. However, this is limited to 9,000 characters. Alternatively, you have the option to indicate simply, my comments will be in the attachments, and then ECHA will look for your information there. However, again, going back to the previous slide, you will need to tick the box on exactly which type of information you are going to be talking about. And there are, we will see this in more detail later. there are different questions on the information that you will provide. ECHA has raised 10 specific questions related to PFAS. And again, if you want to contribute for each one of these, you need to tick the box to indicate that you have information on this topic. And then you can add, there will be a room for these 10 specific questions for you to provide comments. But again, it could be more interesting to simply direct ECHA to the attachments, and then you have a little bit more freedom to expand on the reply. On section 4, you will be asked to attach whatever information you want to share, which can be general comments and responses to the specific requests. It's possible to attach more than one document. Actually, if more than one document is attached, this needs to be done via a compressed archive, and we have a size limit to 20 megabytes. And you will be asked again to clarify that you have removed information that you want to keep confidential. So if you're delivering a position that you want to be mainly non-confidential, but if you are if that document includes certain lines that you would like to have keeping as confidential, you have the opportunity to remove or blank or edit the text for this. However, we do not recommend that, and we recommend the effort to separate confidential against non-confidential information. And the last section, exactly the same thing, only for the confidential information. Same process, you can attach more than one document, and there's a limit to 20 megabytes. And here you will need to give some explanation on why you are flagging this information as confidential, and there can be many reasons. You can provide company sensitive data like company specific economic results in terms of profits, in terms of revenue. You can be adding research and development initiatives which are not yet of the public domain and that you believe can have strong value for the company, but this information needs to be clarified. And then, of course, you need to submit the comments, click the box, I'm not a robot, hit the button to submit. After submission, you will be getting an automatic reply that this has been successful. You will, if you have left, this is like any other kind of activity that you can do on the internet these days. If you have not filled in all the mandatory fields, you will have a reminder. And for time wasters, it's not possible to just submit a full blank response. So at least one comment or one attachment needs to be provided. Okay, so that's the structure. That's what you're going to find when you go to provide your comments to the public consultation. Now, we're now going to go into a little bit of guidance on how we recommend to respond to these consultation. And I think Giovanni has already provided some indications on this, but we need to reiterate that we need to back up whatever we are willing to claim. We need to back it up with data. The time of, let's say, big statements and very strong words in terms of, oh, fluoropolymers are very important, there are no alternatives, that time is over. We need, of course, to continue saying this, but we need to really be able to say, this is the reason why I make this claim. This is the information that I have to demonstrate that there are no alternatives. If we are forced to substitute the use of fluoropolymer-based materials, there's going to be this consequence for our use and eventually for the European society. Worth noting that these consultation, the main objective is the risk assessment committee. There are questions on socioeconomics, on business impact, and we need to give that too. And with the socioeconomic analysis committee will build an opinion as well. But for the socioeconomic analysis, there will be a second public consultation. This one will last 2 months. This is to be expected for beginning of the year 2024, maybe end of this year, beginning of next year. Let's see how quickly they can work on putting this together. But this is the only chance we have on the risk issue. So we need to provide all information that is related to the risk around fluoropolymers and the risk that could be expected from non-continued use. So we're going to see now some ideas, some thoughts, some possibilities, and it's interesting. You are probably going to get similar information from many stakeholders in the value chain. It is important to try to express your opinion with your own words. Keep in mind that, you know, the committees are going to receive hundreds of replies. They want to read something that is adding value and not always the same, exactly the same message. So again, these are the topics on which committees are looking for information. The scope of the restriction option. Well, there are some thoughts that can be laid out here. The definition of PFAS substances that is being used is expected to cover around 10,000 substances. Some of those are hazardous and are dangerous, and as Giovanni said, we cannot defend those reasonably. I mean, it is unquestionable that there has been significant and unnecessary pollution coming from PFAS, but it's the fact that not all companies in the PFAS family share the same hazardous properties, and as such, they will not entail unacceptable risk. And this is the case of fluoropolymers. For a substance to be included in the REACH restriction, it has to be demonstrated that there is an unacceptable risk derived from them. Fluoropolymers are not hazardous. Risk is the combination of hazard and exposure. So if there is no hazard, there is no risk. The inclusion of fluoropolymers in the proposal does not respect the principle of proportionality. There has to be a balance between the risk that is avoided and the negative impacts for society. And in this case, we believe it is not demonstrated. The improvement in terms of risk reduction will be minimal, and the negative impact on the European society will be tremendous. And of course, we need to highlight that there are key features of the continued use of fluoropolymers that are going to be important. It's not only that you as downstream users of fluoropolymers are going to be able to keep your business running and making money. That is important and needs to be highlighted, but we need to focus on critical aspects. We need to focus on safety. A chemical plant that is handling hazardous chemicals relies on fluoropolymer-based material to maintain the integrity of equipment. If we don't have fluoropolymers, we're going to be putting workers at risk. Fluoropolymers are used in materials and systems that help to decarbonize the environment and are helpful for green energy transition systems like batteries, like hydrogen. Fluoropolymers are essential in transport to grant safety of aircrafts for many reasons. Those things need to be highlighted. If we're going to be replacing fluoropolymer by less durable materials, there will be an increase in the need to replace, and there will be an increase in the waste streams, and an increase in the amount of waste that Europe will need to handle. And that is against the principle of circularity. And by the way, we can talk about the fact that, as Giovanni said, excuse me, the only issue around fluoropolymers is persistency. And anything that replaces a fluoropolymer one way or another is going to have to be persistent. So these are the kind of arguments that will need to be developed. Now, one critical thing that is going to be requested is data on exposure and emissions. We are aware that many times this is an area where downstream users may be a little bit more scarce on data. Anyway, if you have information on environmental emissions from your applications, exposure to PFAS chemicals by your workers, that needs to be highlighted. The baseline refers to the current situation related to your use of fluoropolymers. So this is the today scenario. What fluoropolymers are used? What are the yearly volumes? What is your role in the supply chain? To which specific sectors of use you contribute? Analytical methods. This is an area of increased concern in terms that there's there's a lack of clearly defined analytical methods to identify PFAS. So if there's any information that you can share, please do this. If you don't have anything, again, just select the option that you don't have information for this. Information on alternatives. This is probably going to be one of the key areas where the supply chain can contribute. Our message is that for the vast majority of the applications where fluoropolymers are used, there are no alternatives, but of course this needs to be described in detail. Here it would be very interesting if any company has performed internal tests or research and development activities that could unequivocally show that indeed there is no feasible alternative, and why this is the case. Alternatively, you can refer to specifications and to known properties of other materials. So if you need a material that is going to stand above 200 degrees, then we know fluoropolymers can perform, and that other plastic or rubber materials have a decomposition temperature below that, and therefore it is not possible. Again, it's interesting to mention, if you are working on specifications by your customers or even by regulatory requirements that force the use of fluoropolymers, this needs to be highlighted. Information on the benefits of the use clearly indicate why continued use of fluoropolymers is relevant for you, but also for the industrial sectors to which you serve and to the European society as a whole. Again, focusing on those key areas that we have seen: safety of the population, environmental protection, or the adequate functioning of society. Again, highlighting that Europe will need to maintain its leadership and independence in critical technological sectors. Information on internal company data. We've talked about this. Revenue, profit that your company obtains, employment, an indication on sectorial information would be interesting as well. Here We would recommend coordinating if you are members of an industry association or any kind of trade organization covering you and others in your sector. It would be interesting to coordinate with them and to see if they are going to reply, what they're going to reply. Are you going to be covered by that? This would need to be somehow coordinated. The transitional period. So if you have had the opportunity to look at the restriction dossier, and we recommend that you do, there are some derogations offered to continued use of some PFAS for a certain period of time. And there are specific indications on fluoropolymers. Unfortunately, these derogations are not very well described. They're missing a lot of specific sectors, and we and the other stakeholders that we work with are definitely not happy with this. We need to highlight that we don't like exemptions. We don't like derogations. We want a full exemption on fluoropolymers that would simply remove them from the proposal. But obviously, we cannot ignore the fact that these derogations are there, and they need to be commented on. So comments that can be made here is that the complexity of the supply chain involved in fluoropolymers is so large that and the very broad uses in which fluoropolymers are involved will make it impracticable to comply with the restriction. And anything that we can provide to again, it just does not have to be a comment. Any indication with numbers, figures, potential companies involved in a specific value chain would need to be provided. As we said before, when we talk about requesting an exemption, fluoropolymers constitute a specific group of substances with completely different properties. They are polymers of low concern, as Giovanni mentioned. There are other areas that have been flagged as possibilities of concern. The use of PFAS in the manufacturing of fluoropolymers. Industry is moving away from those, and actually there is even a restriction for the continuous use of those PFAS, which will lead, I think it's 5 years. So if that is maintained, after 5 years plus 18 months after entry into force of the restriction, there will be no fluoropolymers on the market that have been manufactured with those PFAS as processing aids. Incineration is being addressed, any concerns that are there, and if end of life continues to be a societal reason for concern, not necessarily a risk-based concern, there are other ways to tackle end of life of fluoropolymers. So we will now look in some detail at the questions that you will find on section 3. So the first question is on sectors and sub-uses. Now here you need to look again at those that are defined in the derogations and indicate if those cover your company. If you are not, you don't have to say anything here. You will need to go to question 6. Question number 2 and number 3, they relate to emissions. So if you have appropriate information regarding, but we need to keep an eye on this because this is only for end of life. So if you have knowledge on what happens with your products at end of life, you need to provide specific indications here. If this is not the case, then just ignore this section. Question 2 is generic on end of life. Question 3 is focused on the incineration process. We don't know. You may or may not be aware of what happens to your products when they are disposed of. Are they incinerated? Yes. What type of incinerator? If this is not known, then again, you can ignore this information. Impact on recycling. Do you have any information on recycling? So that's question number 4. Again, if there is nothing, don't enter into commenting there. On the proposed derogations, if you're provided information on question number 1, if you have identified your sector of use in the proposed derogations, for question 5 is the place where you need to provide information on tonnage and emissions that could be derived from these uses. Section 6. Now, if you do not identify your relevant uses in the restriction proposal, or if you believe that they are poorly described, as is the case in many of the sectors that we have looked at, this is the question where you will need to provide information on your specific application. And of course, because this will be new to the regulators who have not yet seen, right, that's a little bit questionable, but we think they have seen a lot, but they have only considered a limited number of input. Nevertheless, strictly speaking, from a procedural perspective, this will be the first time that they will hear about certain uses. So we need to make sure that our response is as complete as possible with data that is sufficiently accurate for them to understand your use and why these applications need to be considered in the upcoming review of the restriction proposal. So in addition to this, you may have seen that the restriction proposal, as it is established now, it has proposed derogations, and then there are other proposed derogations that are marked for reconsideration. Here they're saying, okay, we think these sections or these uses could be derogated, but we don't really have sufficient information. If in your evaluation you have identified that your uses are covered in one of these derogations marked for reconsideration, and this is the question that you will need to reply to clarify that indeed your sector will need to be considered, and same principle applies. You need to provide information as detailed as possible for this purpose. Analysis of alternatives and socioeconomic analysis. If you have additional data for all the requested details on question 6 on identified undefined uses, you need to provide them here to reinforce your challenge. Again, whatever has been submitted that is not there is not taken into consideration by the dossier submitters and by the committees. So we need to provide as much detail as possible. Derogations and analytical methods. We've talked about this. If you have any proposal there, needs to be provided. So those are the specific questions that you are going to be seeing in section 3. Again, there's always the possibility to build your own reply in your specific attachments. So you, in that case, you would only need to mention that you will be providing more information in the attached documents that you will deliver. Some conclusions. Well, it we need to reiterate the message. This is the last chance we have to really give comments that will be meaningful and will have an impact on the regulators. Therefore, it's strongly recommended that all impacted stakeholders will provide information to this consultation. We recommend providing it as soon as possible. If you believe that you're going to need time to build some replies, well, the deadline is 25th of September. Again, we need to stay away from strong words that are not backed up with data. In fact, it is the case that the dossier submitters have highlighted in the certain annexes of the restriction proposal that they, during the different call for evidence that were triggered, they received some comments from industry that were not relevant. Again, in terms of there are no alternatives, I cannot replace, some materials could work, but not as well. You know, we need to give clear evidence on why this is the case. And again, our objective should be to achieve a broad exemption of fluoropolymers, demonstrate that it's not justified that they are included in this restriction, and that there will be tremendous negative impacts for the European society if the restriction moves on, including fluoropolymers. So with that, I think we have concluded. I will hand back to Giovanni, and we can take any questions that would come.
Okay, thank you very much, Jaime. I just want to underline a couple of things. I understand that to reply to public consultation required also strong, to some question at least, a strong understanding of the proposal. So you should have read it and you should have studied. We will provide, together with these slides, also some other information, for example, on sector of sub-uses that were considered in the presentation, so that you have a list of what is already considered, and in Q1 you can say, yes, this application, I have further information, and also for Q6, so question number 6, those that are not included in the previous one, thanks to the table, you can add your industry or your specific application. The same for derogation. There are a limited derogation related to fluoropolymers. We will send you the list of it so that you can see easily which is already in, and it's an answer to one question, which is not, so that is the extra that haven't been considered. So question number 6, missing uses. I also want to underline something that was said by Jaime. Yes, we will share some examples, so we will share some information about application on how we will answer, but it will be really, really important. You know, many of our applications are the same. A PTFE backup, for example, it works the same for everyone. You can take the information that we will share or some other organization will share with you and copy and paste. This won't be appreciated by the regulators. It's always better to take that information and use different word, use your knowledge, add something so that it's true. It's always a backup, but it has been explained in a different way so that it's an extra information. If we will copy and paste a lot of data or informations, they won't be read because it's always the same copy and paste. That's not something they will like. So I would strongly suggest you to re-elaborate. Also, to conclude, I understand that we are working on our side as Fluor Seals to reply, to recover data. We have internal teams that are working for our side, but we are one company. I understand that is a challenge, that a lot of information are required, and sometimes it seems that we don't have this information. I strongly suggest you to do your best to fulfill as much information you can. At the same time, I also say don't say it's too complex, someone else will do the job. Bigger companies will reply and will give the data. All data that we can share in this presentation will be valuable because, as mentioned, ECA as a by law must consider all the comments. So all the comments are important. Even if you cannot reply to all questions, it's better to say something to answer to only one question. But if you don't, they won't be read, it won't be considered. If you believe it's too challenging, try to do it your best. It's better something than nothing. Again, I want to thank you, everyone. I believe we have a couple of questions. Okay, I see the first one from Kim. Do you recommend for end user producer of PTFE, for example, to submit to ECA website? Of course, Kim. As mentioned, the contribute of everyone is really important. It's important from raw materials producer, it's important from manufacturer, it's important from small machining shop, big machining shop, resellers, but most is to engage the value chain, our customers. You have to do the same. You have to talk with your customer because, okay, we are working and we believe we can get an exemption. But if we want, your customer, at certain point, you will have to go to your customer and say, come on, I cannot supply anymore this product. And this is worst because they will tell you, why you didn't tell me before? We have a problem, it's true, but it's better to create a problem today and solve it together than creating a way bigger problem tomorrow. So to engage the end users, it's strongly recommend. Also because their information could be considered way more valuable than ours. Again, I make the example, a small seals that is mandatory, that is that components that is making work a big machine, a multi-million-dollar machines. If we don't explain why that seals, and maybe the original equipment manufacturer and the producer of that machine is working thanks to that PTFE gasket, PTFE lip seals, FKM or ring, that application, in the case that we can't get an exemption, will be banned. And then it will be a mess because that machine is producing huge value to the economy. But if no one's talk about that single seals, regulators don't know. So yes, Kim, it's really, really important to engage your value chain. Hans, could you please provide with us example of strong cases that are supported by data and other compelling evidence? We aim to use this example as reference for our end user so that they can make a stronger case for importance of fluoropolymers. By providing our clients with concrete example, we hope to encourage them to take action and make compelling arguments for the continued use of fluoropolymers. Of course, Hans. Of course, we will. We have some information cases that can be shared. Again, it's important, and I really like what you're saying because I see that you are involved and you have the right attitude. We can share this data. Of course, more we go in the downstream user, more information they have. I can do some general statement. For example, lining in chemical industry, which is why you use PTFE for lining, because of chemical resistance, because of flexibility that resists to thermal shocks. Which are alternatives? Glass can be an alternative, but it's more fragile. It doesn't withstand to thermal shocks so that it breaks, so that we have risk of leakage. It's a risk for the environment. This is a case for an application, for example, and we will share some papers with you. But more we go down in the downstream users, more information they will have, because instead of just saying nasty chemicals, they will say we are using these specific chemicals that is resisting to PTFE, and maybe glass is not even an alternative. Okay, not glass, but polypro or whatever. So we will share this information, but they will have to contribute because they have more information than us.
Yeah, and Giovanni, if I can add, yeah, we can also share a report that we prepared last year for describing specific cases on fluoropolymer applications, and the key message is why these materials are needed and why they are irreplaceable, focusing on something else. So the message that the regulators don't like to hear is there's no alternative. Their position is you can always use something else. So tell me what's going to happen if you use something else. And this can be a little bit reduced performance or catastrophic failure. So we need to describe that, and we need to give all the information that we have on the table. And in this report that we build, there are some specific examples, and maybe you can pick up some ideas from that. We describe, I think, 2021 applications, but these can help you to take ideas and see what needs to be built.
Absolutely. Going on with other questions, I see Alberto. Center on mechanical parts. I have got a lot of application in mind for exclusive use of PTFE compounds. That's great. Basically, again, I know that it's a challenging work, but what we suggest you to do is mentioning the application, why you are using that specific PTFE compounds, if you can imagine some alternative and why they won't work. Again, I know that it's a difficult job, but you can always imagine a different product. But then you have to explain why it won't work. PTFE compounds, it's great. Maybe you can use polyurethane, but in that specific application, you are reaching a too high temperature that will melt polyurethane, so it won't work, or the pressure is different and it won't work. So I know that it's difficult, but what the regulators want to hear is that we do this job of trying to find an alternative and why that alternative won't work. So this is really, really important. It's challenging. Trust me, we are doing the same. It's challenging. But if you start talking with your team, you can find something that it might work, but then you will understand why it worked worst or not have the same performance and PTFE. And this is what regulators want to hear. They want to understand why we are saying there are no alternatives. Again, the definition of PFAS family is too broad. What definition would be correct in your opinion? Maybe I try, and then if you want to add,
Go ahead.
Okay, the definition was taken by a definition of OECD from OECD. Sorry, oxide is in Italian. From OECD, that is a structural definition. That definition, to some extent, can be fine, but because they are not sharing the same those 8 different properties that are stated in the Annex 15, high persistency, toxicologic. We believe that fluoropolymer can be exempted, as other PFAS already received, very few received the full exemption from the proposal restriction, even if they fall into this definition, but because they, for a certain reason, they have received the time unlimited derogation, this can be a case. So they can keep the same definition, but fluoropolymer can be exempted by law. This could be a solution. Of course, I'm not a regulator.
Yeah, look, I think that's a good answer, Giovanni. For me, the key question is, why do you want a definition of PFAS? So if you're a scientist, so the chemistry of the fluorine carbon bond is extremely versatile. So if you're a scientist and you know there are a lot of PFAS substances and you want to categorize them in a way, polymeric, non-polymeric, short chain, long chain, liquid, solid, gas, you need a definition, of course, and that it's good to have a definition. The problem is that the definition that was that is being used for the restriction proposal, which was created by the OECD, as Giovanni said, was not originally developed for regulatory purposes. The problem is when you take that definition and you say, oh, this is great, I have a definition, I'm going to build a restriction on this. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what they're doing. So what definition would be correct? For me, the definition is fine. You know, as long as there are clearly differentiated subgroups of PFAS when they want to regulate them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And regulation should be based on properties. If you can demonstrate that a specific subgroup of those PFAS has different properties, you need to apply those differences.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can regulate the subgroups that has specific risk, toxicologic for the human health or risk for the environment. That subgroup must be regulated. As we mentioned, we are not defending PFAS that has some risk. So this, of course, I agree with Jaime. Another questions that I see. So when fluoropolymers are not removed from the list, the restriction PFAS proposal, they will be banned from the industry in the Europe after transitional period. Okay, as the proposal has been presented, they are considering they try two different approach. One is a full ban after a transitional period. The second, that is the one that they decided as the best one, required the transitional period and then some derogation, time-limited derogation. Basically, this means that some industry, oil and gas, for example, has been proposed a derogation for seals made of fluoropolymers. After a transitional period, so European ECHA will develop their opinion. They will go to the EU Commission. EU Commission, the worst case scenario, will vote the proposal as it has been presented. Okay, this is the case. After 18, we will have 18 months of transitional period for everything that is not mentioned. Industries, chemical industry, 18 months gone. You cannot use any more fluoropolymer. For those that have received a time-limited restriction, food contact materials, seals, gasket, fluoropolymers, it's a 6 years restriction, if I don't mind. So that means that after that 18 months, we will have extra 18 months to develop an alternative for that specific case. Now, guys, the proposal, as mentioned, it's lacking of a lot of information. Regulators, they are not crazy guys. They understand. They understand what are the information that we will provide. Again, we strongly believe we can get an exemption for several reasons that we have mentioned today and many others. But at the same time, even if we won't get an exemption, a lot more of derogation must be considered. Again, must be considered if we will provide data to prove why in chemical industry PTFE is something that requires years to develop a solution. Now we have a technical committee that has and must by law consider all the information that we will provide. And so we will, this, in the worst case where we will get a ban of fluoropolymer with some derogation, I expect personally to have way more derogation and way more time, because they will have to consider all the information that the industry will supply. So again, it's the worst case scenario, but it won't be as worse as it is, because this, as mentioned, this proposal is lacking of a lot of information. So you understand, now they must have, they must consider all the information and prove why they didn't consider some if they want. I don't know if you want to add something, Jaime.
No, that's perfect. Good answer.
Information. Okay, information on alternative. How prove something is not present if... okay, no, we already answered this, sorry.
I think on the alternative, I want to make one comment, Giovanni.
Please.
So one thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is that industry is going to reply, but there are others that are going to be replying as well. There are a lot of NGOs who say that they defend the environment, which is not always true. And they have only one thing in mind: get rid of chemicals, ban them, have a European territory free of chemicals. This is what some in the sector, it's not my line, but some say that we're going to a sustainable, jobless Europe. So they're going to be putting pressure, and their message, which is cheating, in my opinion, is there's always if you innovate, you will find an alternative. You will find an alternative. That's not always true. There's also a limit to science, and the particular message that we want to focus on fluoropolymers is, yes, fluoropolymers are persistent. The restriction proposal is based on persistency and other concerns. We can demonstrate that for fluoropolymers, we can remove the other concerns. So we are left only with persistence. And that we cannot change. Fluoropolymers are persistent. And actually, we could open a debate to say whether persistency is good or bad, actually. I personally think it's good, but we're not going to win that battle. Anyway, they say they want to regulate on the basis of persistency. You name me a material that will perform not equally, but close to fluoropolymer under very strong chemical attack, under very high temperatures for a very long time, and that will not be persistent. I cannot think of anything, and I'm a chemical engineer, I cannot really think of anything that will meet those criteria and will not be a persistent substance. So, what's going to be the outcome of this? That we're going to replace a persistent material by something that is also persistent, and that because it will perform worse, will have to be replaced more frequently and increasing the rate of waste generation? Doesn't really make much sense. So when we talk about alternatives, we need to highlight that fluoropolymers are the innovative material. For example, you will hear in some statements which we make sometimes, we say, oh, no fluoropolymer, no semiconductors. That's not really true. You can have semiconductors without fluoropolymers, but you cannot have the modern technology of extremely reduced in size semiconductors. So you could not have laptops, telephones, smartwatches, and things like that. You could have a 1970 IBM computer that takes a full room. Yeah, you can have that computer, but not the modern one. So fluoropolymer is the innovation. Fluoropolymer gaskets for the chloralkali process that rely on fluoropolymer. Years ago, they were relied on asbestos. So fluoropolymers removed asbestos from that use, which I would say it's a significant improvement in terms of health and safe conditions. And there are, we need to keep in mind all the possibilities. And as I said, we will share this report that we did last year, and you can look at the example of the cable industry and cables in aircrafts. You can have up to 500 kilometers of cable in one airplane if you put them all one after the other. 500 kilometers, that's quite a lot. And those need to be, again, resistant to high and low temperatures. They need to resist exposure to kerosene, which is quite aggressive. And so you could tell me, well, maybe, we have PEK, which could be an alternative. Okay, but PEK is not flexible. So that means that you cannot place 500 kilometers of cable into a compacted, limited space like an aircraft. So when we look at alternatives, first we need to look at exactly what are the properties, the combination of properties that fluoropolymers bring that make them useful for my application, and are all of those combined properties fulfilled by a different material? If yes, and if it is cheaper, I'm assuming you would have changed some time ago and not wait until you got a restriction in place. And if you haven't changed, it's because no other material matches the conditions that you require. So we need to build stories around these considerations.
Absolutely. It's a lot of work, but we have to do it. Kim, again, I've seen I'm already answer you, but I want to share with everyone. We will inform our customer. There is a date, 23rd of May, ECA first committee meeting on the topic. You mentioned date in September. What is the deadline? So basically, now we have 6 months, roughly 5 probably, because the end of the public consultation is the 25th of September. So we can apply comments up to that date. As mentioned by Jaime, we strongly suggest to apply comments to reply to the consultation as early as possible. Why we say so? Because during these 6 months, anyhow, the two committee will start to meetings and they will start developing their opinion. So if they will receive all the important comments at the end, they already develop an opinion, and to break down the opinion will be stronger. Now they are like a free room and they have something that comes from the proposal, but they also have to learn from our comments. So more information early we give, it will help them to build an opinion. If they will build their opinion based only on the information of people that doesn't like fluoropolymer for several reasons, they will have an opinion, and then to change their mind, it would be more difficult. If we give some strong information that we convince them on the safety, on the importance of fluoropolymer as early as possible, it will help in the process to receive an exemption instead of derogations. So yes, we have until the end of September, but as early as we can reply to the consultation is better to help our cause. Can you share with us some short template that can be sent to our relevant clients, the presented problem, and ask them sharing their problem in case of supply cases of products? So yes, then maybe we can talk in detail on what you want or what you need. As mentioned, we are going to share this slide. It's already a good guideline on how to apply. We will share some other tables that will help you in being able to reply to the questions, not even fully read the proposal. We are talking about more than thousands of pages of proposals, so I understand, and most of it's about PFAS substances, toxicological profiles. So we will give you some extra tables to help to orientate yourself in the questions. As Jaime said, we can share also some cases on application. I make the example of lining is one of the cases they develop together with the other organization on specific applications, so that you can see what can be a guideline. Again, I strongly suggest not to copy and paste those. If you have the same application, just say the same things, but with your own information and with the extra information of your OEMs. Copy and paste is not like it. They said yesterday that material with more than 50 milligrams of fluorine will be at risk to be banned. This sounds a battle against fluorine more than PFAS themselves. You know.
Well, I think this goes back to the limitations in analytical methods, because it's not always possible. Again, we said 10,000 PFAS. How do you measure them all? So you can have analysis of certain PFAS. There's the most common ones, but ultimately analyzing fluorine is the quick way to determine potential content. So actually, I would say not necessarily, and they've kept some what they call PFAS that can degrade in the environment naturally, that are not included in the restriction. So the concern is mainly PFAS, and fluorine is a way of detecting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also correct me if I'm wrong, but yesterday the two main speakers, they were German and the Netherlands authorities. So again, they are those guys that develop the proposal. They are not the technical guys that are working on ECA that should be impartial and they should receive the information and elaborate. So they have their own way of pushing against PFAS because they prepare these proposals. So it's true, they have done their webinar, but again, it's the people that work on the proposal as it is. So we have to wait for the development of technical guys from the ECA that we believe, and here it comes one of the latest questions. The people who will carry out the public consultation are people with good or excellent technical knowledge of this product in question. If so, do you think they realize the problem of having to ban this product too easily? I will start to answer, and maybe I know I may want to add something. There are different specialists in this committee. There are toxicologists, there are people very expert on health, on environment. So they are technical guys, but they are not educated on fluoropolymer. We have to educate them on fluoropolymer. Again, they are technical. So they don't really like sentences. They like data that they can apply to their competencies and say, okay, there is no toxicological risk because there is this study that is not posing a risk. Fluoropolymer are non-toxic. Of course, we have to educate them how replying to the public consultation with data.
Yeah, I think it's clear. We need to differentiate the risk assessment committee. They're going to look at risk. The socioeconomic analysis committee is the one that will be more sensible on the messages of what's going to be the impact if we can't use fluoropolymers. But yeah, we need to provide that information all together in this round. And as mentioned, there will be another public consultation for the S.p.A opinion.
Yes, exactly. So my answer was more related to risk assessment committee on socioeconomic analysis. They will develop the socioeconomic analysis. So here I believe that, as mentioned many times today, but I want to reiterate the message. More information they will receive from the downstream users, more value they will receive. Because again, our industry, fluoropolymer, is a small industry. Let's an assumption, 10 billion. What is 10 billion in the EU economy? Nothing. If I see the number, I regulate, oh, there is a risk, 10 billion, it's not a risk to shut down at 10 billion. We can live without it. But if we will be able to let answer to the public consultation to our customer, to the customer of our customer, to the OEM, to those guys that are using that specific seals that is granting the functionality and the productivity and the efficiency of very big machines that has an unestimable value for the industry, for the European industry. That's different. Semiconductor. It's true what Jaime said before, that cannot be produced cheap. But the machines that produce those small chips, if fluoropolymer will be banned in Europe, okay, fine, we can produce small chips in Asia or in America. So we are losing that value. Of course, fluoropolymers industry in semiconductor is Europe, again, is a small industry. 1 billion, I don't know, just number, 1 billion. Oh, who cares? It's a multi-billion industry semiconductor. But then STM, Intel, Samsung, they cannot produce their chip in Europe, so they are not investing in fabs, in those 50 multi-billion investment of Samsung and Intel fabs in Germany, Italy, whatever. They cannot do it because they cannot produce their chip. They will do it somewhere else. All the value chain, because they can't use that few PTFE or fluoropolymer components in their processing, they will create a huge effect on European economy. Only doing so, explaining this information, the socioeconomic analysis, can realize which is the problem. But if no one is saying this information, they won't know it. And more, if I'm saying this, I'm protecting my baby. If Intel for example, is saying, or STM Microelectronics or whoever is producing those machines, I cannot produce these machines so that Intel cannot produce their chip in Europe. Only with their opinion, they will more convince about. Of course, it's important that I will say the same in my words and from my understanding, but more downstream use we arrive, more efficient and effective it will be to regulators.
Yeah.
Can everyone send just one answer, so better wait to have all information from customer, or can we send one issue earlier and then maybe another one later? Jaime?
Well, I think again, I think we mentioned this. If you are involved in an industry association that is going to take a strong position on this matter, that could be a possibility. If this is not the case, I would recommend that every company submits individual information, particularly if you have cases that you can describe in a coherent and effective way. Also, be mindful of the time. If you want to submit something impactful by the end of the month of May, which is less than 2 months from now, sectorial or joint replies need time to develop, need agreement, need discussion. I don't know how easy that's going to be. But if you can get together with a number of companies that do the same application and say one of you submits the reply on behalf of the others and the others say, this company has replied on our behalf and we fully adapt to what they are saying, then that's a possibility. And, what I would recommend is maybe individual companies would submit as confidential information their business situation in terms of profit and revenue, employment, and things like that. If that does not want to be shared, because frequently when we have experienced that when managing associations or consortia or industry groups, sharing all of this information is not always easy. And if you say you represent 10 companies and you want to develop or if you want to submit joint information on socioeconomic parameters, you need replies from the 10 of them. You cannot say I represent 10, but only 3 replied with revenue, because that's just 30%. So it is possible to submit jointly, but it needs to be adequately managed and ensure that the reply is impactful.
Absolutely. So last question, is it allowed to share this recording and sheet with our customer? So of course, I believe Jaime already allowed us to share the slides. So as soon as you will receive, I believe that if you want to send those to your customer, is not public. On the webinar, we will probably make it available on our channel. Of course, as soon we will receive from Ken Service the permission to do so, so that if we be on YouTube, you can just link it to anyone who you believe must see this. I want to thank you all, guys. I want to thank you again, Jaime, to give his contribution to this.
My pleasure.
And let's work to prove that fluoropolymer are essential for our economy. Thank you, everyone, again. Have a nice day and see you soon.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.